Sometimes, death is the only way to hear the truth about the people you love most. Sometimes, you have to die to finally see who they really were all along. Let me tell you about Aaliyah Ashford, a woman who had to lose everything to discover she never really had it in the first place. A woman who died on an operating table and came back to life with a fire in her chest that would burn down every lie her family had built around her. Besties, before we continue, let me ask you a question. Have you subscribed to our channel? If not, please do so to help this channel build a strong community and tell us where you are watching from in the comments section. Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you'll understand why the coldest betrayals happen in hospital rooms where people think you can't hear them anymore. You'll understand why sometimes the dead know more about the living than the living know about themselves. And you might just realize that the people praying for your recovery are the same ones secretly hoping you never wake up. This is a story about twins no one expected, a fortune no one knew existed, and justice that arrived 29 days too late to save a woman's heart, but just in time to save her children's future. Aaliyah Ashford was 28 years old when she went into labor on a Tuesday morning in September 2024. She'd been married to Minjun Ashford for 3 years, living in their modest 2-bedroom house in Riverside, Connecticut, working as a paralegal at a small law firm, while Minjun managed his family's struggling real estate business. She was 7 months pregnant, glowing with that particular joy that comes from creating life, completely unaware that the baby she carried would become the reason everyone she trusted would reveal their true nature. It started with contractions that felt wrong, too early, too intense. Minjun drove her to Riverside Memorial Hospital, his hands tight on the steering wheel, his mother, Jin Ashford, already calling his phone every 3 minutes demanding updates. Aaliyah remembered thinking how strange it was that Jin, who had spent 3 years treating her like an unwelcome guest in her own son's life, suddenly seemed so concerned about the pregnancy. What Aaliyah didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have known, was that Jin Ashford had already made plans for this baby. Plans that required Aaliyah to be cooperative or, better yet, absent. The delivery room was chaos from the beginning, with Dr. Sarah Chan, the attending obstetrician, calling for an emergency C-section. Aaliyah heard Minjun's voice somewhere far away, scared but steady, telling her it would be okay. Then everything went dark. Not the gentle dark of sleep, the absolute dark of nothing. Aaliyah Ashford's heart stopped at 11:47 a.m. The monitors flatlined. The medical team worked with desperate efficiency, compressions, medications, controlled chaos. For 4 minutes and 32 seconds, Aaliyah Ashford was clinically dead. But here's what the medical books don't tell you about those minutes between life and death. Sometimes consciousness doesn't leave. Sometimes it just relocates, trapped in a body that won't respond, in a mind that can still hear everything. Aaliyah woke up in that darkness, to the sound of her baby crying. No, not one baby. 2 distinct cries, overlapping, creating a harmony of new life. Twins, she heard Dr. Chan say, her voice filled with wonder and relief. She was carrying twins. We had no idea. The second baby was hidden behind the first on every ultrasound. Aaliyah tried to speak, tried to move, tried to open her eyes. Nothing. Her body was a prison, and she was locked inside, conscious but completely paralyzed. The medical term is locked-in syndrome, a rare complication where the patient is aware but cannot move or communicate. To everyone in that delivery room, Aaliyah Ashford looked dead. Her eyes were closed, her breathing maintained only by machines, her body completely still. But inside she was screaming. The first voice she heard clearly was Minjun's. Are they okay? Are the babies okay? They're perfect, Dr. Chan replied. Two boys, small but healthy, your wife saved them. Her body kept them safe even as her own system shut down. Aaliyah felt a surge of love, so powerful it should have restarted her heart right there. She had sons. Twin sons. She was a mother. Then she heard another voice, one that made her blood run cold. Well, at least she did one thing right before she left us. Hai-Jin Ashford, Min-jun's mother, standing somewhere near the door. Her voice carried that particular tone of satisfaction people use when things work out exactly as they hoped. She left us diamonds, Hai-Jin continued, her jewelry catching the harsh hospital light. 2 babies, that's going to be complicated, expensive, you're going to need help. The conversation moved out of the delivery room as they transferred her to intensive care. Her body rolled on a gurney, her mind trapped inside, desperate to scream that she was still here, still fighting, still alive. For the next 29 days, Aaliyah existed in a nightmare that most people couldn't imagine, conscious but invisible, aware but unable to respond, hearing every word, every plan, every betrayal that unfolded around her supposedly lifeless body. The first 3 days were the hardest. Min-jun sat by her bedside, holding her unresponsive hand, talking to her about the twins. Jaden and Jordan, he named them. He told her they were beautiful, that they had her eyes, that he wished she could see them. Aaliyah wanted to weep. She tried so hard to squeeze his hand, to give any sign that she was still there, but her body refused every command. On day 4, another voice entered her room. Is she really not going to wake up? Aaliyah didn't recognize the voice at first. Then Min-jun answered, his tone shifting to something softer, more intimate than he'd ever used with her. The doctors say it's unlikely, Soo-jin. The brain damage was severe. Soo-jin. Min-jun had mentioned her before, his new administrative assistant at the real estate office. Efficient, organized, good with clients. It's just so sad, Soo-jin said. You were going to leave her anyway. Now you're stuck like this, waiting. The words hit Aaliyah like physical blows. Going to leave her. What? Soo-jin continued. It's complicated, Min-jun. The timing is just terrible, but now you have the twins. We can raise them together. We talked about this. This was not mourning. This was inconvenience, interrupted by her refusal to die cleanly. Over the next weeks, the picture became devastatingly clear. Min-jun and Soo-jin had been having an affair for 8 months. They'd been planning to wait until after the baby was born. Then Min-jun would file for divorce, claiming the marriage had broken down. Soo-jin would step in as the new mother figure. They'd already looked at houses together, bigger ones, better neighborhoods. The pregnancy had accelerated their timeline. And now Aaliyah's coma had complicated everything. But the real horror was still coming. The betrayal of kindness. On day 7, Hai-Jin Ashford arrived with documents, the click of an expensive pen echoing in the room. The insurance policy pays out $1 million if she dies within 30 days of the accident, Hai-Jin said to Min-jun. After that, it's considered a vegetative state, and the payout drops to nothing. Accident. They were calling her pregnancy complications an accident. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with this, Mom, Min-jun said, but his voice was uncertain, not horrified. That was the moment Aaliyah understood. She had married a man who could be persuaded. Your business is drowning in debt, Hai-Jin said. You have 2 newborns who need everything, and you have a woman who, according to 3 doctors, will never wake up. The merciful thing, Hai-Jin continued, is to let her go. Let her go. Aaliyah screamed silently. I'm here, I'm right here. And the twins, Hai-Jin added. Honestly, 2 is going to be difficult, expensive. If you wanted to consider putting one up for adoption, there are private agencies that pay very well for healthy white newborns. The room spun. Aaliyah's consciousness tilted, horror too massive to process. They were discussing selling one of her children like a used car. "Mom, I can't." "You can't afford not to," Haijin interrupted. "Think practically, Minjun, keep one twin. Let a wealthy family take the other. The child gets a better life. You get the financial freedom to raise one properly." "Which one?" Minjun asked. "Whichever one the agency thinks will place easier," Haijin said dismissively. "It's not like they have personalities yet." They had names. Jaden and Jordan. They were 7 days old. And their grandmother was casually discussing which one to sell. Over the following days, Aaliyah listened. She listened as Haijin made phone calls to private adoption attorneys. She listened as Minjun and Sujin discussed their future, planning a life that had no room for both twins. She listened as nurses debated whether to discontinue life support, whether it was cruel to keep her alive when there was no hope. But there was hope. Aaliyah herself was fighting, her consciousness pushing against the paralysis, trying desperately to find a way back to her body, back to her babies. On day 14, a lawyer arrived. Aaliyah heard the expensive shoes on linoleum, the careful professional voice explaining estate documents to Minjun. "Your wife had no will," the lawyer said, "which means under Connecticut law, everything goes to you as the surviving spouse, and then to the children." "There's nothing," Minjun replied bitterly. "She worked as a paralegal. We have about $12,000 in savings." "Actually," the lawyer continued, and something in his voice changed, "that's what I came to discuss. Your wife recently inherited a considerable estate from a distant relative, a great-aunt in Maine who passed away 6 months ago. The estate executor has been trying to reach Mrs. Ashford for weeks." "How considerable?" Haijin asked sharply. The lawyer cleared his throat. "The estate is valued at approximately $42 million. Property, investments, a trust fund, all left to Aaliyah Marie Ashford née Bennett as the last surviving descendant of the Bennett shipping family." If Aaliyah could have gasped, she would have. She'd known her mother came from old New England money, but they'd been estranged. Aaliyah had assumed she'd been cut off entirely when her mother married a struggling musician against the family's wishes. Apparently, one great-aunt had kept track, had remembered, had left everything to the granddaughter she'd never met. $42 million, Haijin repeated slowly. The silence stretched. Then a sound, pure delighted greed. "Well," Haijin said, "that changes things significantly, doesn't it?" "If she dies," the lawyer explained, "the money goes to the twins. But as their father, Minjun, you would control the trust until they reach 21. "And if she wakes up?" Minjun asked. "If she wakes up, it's entirely hers. You'd have no legal claim unless she chooses to share it. Connecticut is not a community property state, and inheritances are considered separate property." Aaliyah felt the shift instantly. They no longer wanted her dead quickly. They wanted control. "How long did you say we have before the insurance policy expires?" Haijin asked. 23 days, Minjun answered quietly. "And the doctor said she'll never wake up," Haijin continued. "Even if she did, she'd have severe brain damage. She wouldn't be able to manage that kind of money. She'd need a conservatorship." The lawyer's voice turned cold. "I'm not sure what you're suggesting, Mrs. Ashford, but I should remind you that any attempt to influence medical care for financial gain would be illegal." "Of course not," Haijin said smoothly. "I'm simply trying to understand the situation. My daughter-in-law is dying. We need to make difficult decisions." But Aaliyah heard the calculations. The plans forming. For the next 15 days, Aaliyah fought harder than she ever had in her life. She focused every ounce of will on moving, on responding, on finding any pathway back to her body. Physical therapists moved her limbs, testing for responses. She tried to tense against them, nothing. Neurologists shined lights in her eyes, checked reflexes, ran endless tests. She tried to blink, to focus, to scream. Still nothing. But something was changing. The paralysis was loosening, not gone but shifting. Somewhere deep in her nervous system, connections were reforming, messages from her brain finally starting to reach her muscles again. Like a phone line reconnecting, one wire at a time. On day 26, something else happened. A woman arrived at the hospital. Older, elegant, with a face Aaliyah recognized instantly from old family photos her mother had kept. "I'm Evelyn Bennett," the woman said, pulling a chair close to Aaliyah's bed. "Your grandmother's younger sister, your great-aunt." Aaliyah realized the great-aunt. "I know you can't hear me," Evelyn continued gently, "but I wanted to come anyway. Your mother was my favorite niece. When she died, I lost track of you. That was my mistake, and I'm sorry." She paused. "But I made sure you were provided for. The money is yours. It always was meant to be yours." Evelyn took Aaliyah's unresponsive hand. "Your mother-in-law called me yesterday," Evelyn said. "She wanted to discuss your care options. She said you'd want your sons to be well provided for, that we should work together." "She assured me you'd never wake up," Evelyn added quietly. That seemed to make her quite happy. Evelyn was silent for a moment. Then she squeezed Aaliyah's hand. "But here's what that woman doesn't know. I spent 40 years as a prosecuting attorney in Maine. I know predators when I see them, and I know how to protect family." She leaned closer. "I've already called my lawyers. Every penny of that inheritance is locked in an irrevocable trust. You are the sole beneficiary. If you die, it goes directly to your children, held in trust that neither your husband nor his mother can touch until the boys turn 25. No access before then. Every expenditure audited." And then calmly, "I also hired a private investigator. Let's see what we find," Evelyn said quietly. Over the next 3 days, Evelyn Bennett was a whirlwind. She hired round-the-clock private nurses to document every visitor, every conversation. She requested copies of all of Aaliyah's medical records. She attended every doctor's meeting, asking pointed questions, challenging assumptions, and making it clear that Aaliyah Ashford was not alone. She waited. On day 29, at 2:47 in the afternoon, Aaliyah's finger moved. Just one finger. The smallest twitch. But the nurse saw it immediately. "Dr. Chan," she called, "we have movement." Within minutes, the room filled with medical staff. "Aaliyah, if you can hear me, try to squeeze my hand," Dr. Chan said. Aaliyah focused, every atom of her being on that hand. Squeeze. 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 Her fingers contracted, weakly but unmistakably. The room erupted in controlled excitement. More tests. More commands. Blink your eyes. Move your toe. Squeeze again. Each response took monumental effort. But Aaliyah gave them. She was coming back. After 29 days of silence and imprisonment, she was finally coming back. By evening, she could open her eyes. The light was blinding, painful, but it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. Faces swam into focus. Dr. Chan, smiling. Nurses, amazed. Evelyn, tears streaming down her elegant face. And in the doorway, looking like he'd seen a ghost, Minjun Ashford. Behind him, Hai-jin's face was ashen, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Aaliyah's lips moved. Her voice came out barely a whisper, rough from weeks of disuse. "My babies," she managed. "Where are my babies?" They're in the nursery, Dr. Chan said gently, and I believe it's time we discuss some things. Thank God, Minjun said. We thought we'd lost you. Aaliyah's voice was stronger now, each word deliberate. I heard everything. The color drained from Minjun's face. Every conversation, Aaliyah continued. Every plan, every betrayal, I heard all of it. Haijin stepped forward. You're confused. You've been unconscious. You don't. I was in a locked-in coma, Aaliyah interrupted, her voice gaining strength. I was conscious but paralyzed. It's documented in my medical records. Dr. Chan, Aaliyah said, tell them. Dr. Chan nodded slowly. It's incredibly rare, but yes, Aaliyah was likely conscious for most of her coma. Her brain never stopped functioning. Haijin's face went from pale to gray. I heard you planning to sell one of my children, Aaliyah said, her voice shaking now with rage. I heard you celebrating my death. I heard you discussing how to control my inheritance. That's not, we would never, Minjun stammered. $42 million, Aaliyah said. That's what my great-aunt left me. Money you'll never touch. Money you were so eager to steal. Evelyn stepped beside Aaliyah's bed, her presence commanding. I've already secured the inheritance in a trust that neither of you can access, Evelyn said. I've also hired investigators who discovered some interesting things about unpaid taxes. Should we discuss those, Haijin? Haijin's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. And you, Minjun, Evelyn continued. I believe your girlfriend, Sujin, would be interested to know that you've been promising her a future funded by your wife's death. The private investigator has recordings. Minjun stumbled backward. Please, he whispered. Aaliyah, I can explain. Get out, Aaliyah said. Then louder. Get out. Both of you. But the babies, Haijin started. Only mine, Aaliyah said. You'll never see them again, you'll never touch them, you'll never speak their names. Security was called. Minjun and Haijin were escorted from the hospital. That night, Aaliyah held her sons for the first time. Jaden and Jordan. Tiny, perfect. Dark hair, dark eyes, looking up at her like she was their entire world. Which she was. Because she'd come back from death itself to protect them. The legal battle that followed was brutal. Minjun tried to claim paternal rights. Haijin tried to claim grandparental visitation. Both claims were destroyed. By the recorded conversations the private nurses had documented, by the adoption agency consultations, by evidence of Minjun's lies to Sujin, and by financial records that painted a very clear picture of intent. By Christmas, Aaliyah had full custody. Minjun was granted supervised visitation rights, a privilege he rarely used. Haijin Ashford was legally barred from contact with the twins until they turned 18. The inheritance from Evelyn Bennett's sister was more than money. It was freedom. Aaliyah left Connecticut. She moved to Portland, Maine, near Evelyn, who became the grandmother her sons deserved. She went back to school. She finished her law degree. She specialized in family law because she understood something most lawyers don't. That betrayal happens in hospital rooms where people think you can't hear them. That sometimes you have to die to finally see the truth about the people you trusted most. Jaden and Jordan grew up knowing their story, not to scare them, but to teach them. To teach them that their mother had fought her way back from death to protect them. That was the kind of love they could trust. That was the kind of strength they inherited. And sometimes, on quiet nights, Aaliyah would tell them about the 29 days. She'd tell them about the moment her finger moved. About the look on their grandmother's face when she realized the woman she tried to erase had heard every word. What happened to Dad? Jordan asked once when he was 10. Aaliyah considered her answer carefully. He made choices, she said. Bad ones. He chose money over love, convenience over integrity. Those choices have consequences. Do you hate him? Jaden asked. Aaliyah smiled. No, she said. I pity him, because he had everything that mattered, and he traded it for things that never last. The truth is this. The betrayal Minjun and Haijin showed Aaliyah in those 29 days revealed exactly who they were. And Aaliyah showed them what real strength looks like when you refuse to stay dead. Sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't punishment. It's building a beautiful life with the people who tried to erase you, thriving in the space where they expected you to disappear. Aaliyah Ashford did exactly that. And every single day of her beautiful, free, protected life was the sweetest justice she could imagine. If you enjoyed this story, besties, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Drop a comment below and tell us, what would you do if the person you loved challenged everything you thought you knew about love and control?